Claude Opus 5 just came out, and let me tell you, the numbers we have seen on this model are so insane that it right now may be literally the best AI model on the market. And that's because when you take a look at every single number that was just published officially by Anthropic, it kind of seems that Opus 5 is significantly better in almost everything than Fable 5, which is kind of crazy, but not really when you take a look at it from the perspective that Fable 5 was the best that they had. But in reality, what we've seen recently with OpenAI and many of the other providers really is that they don't ever release their best they release something close to it, but that's still actually already a couple of months old. When we take a look at these slightly more in-depth details here, we can see that Claude Opus 5 has a reliable knowledge cutoff date of May 2026, whereas Sonnet and Fable 5 both actually have had their cutoff January 2026. And that, in my logic, also means that this most likely has at least a couple more months of actively catching up with AI advancements. And what I mean with that is, if your cutoff is January 2026, that's really where the majority of the work was put in then, right after 2026 January, let's say, or maybe caught up with that still partially, right? But if it's May 2026, what I kind of feel is more likely happening right here is that the majority of all this discovery, specifically using AI to make your AI better, happened after May 2026. And you got to understand that in the last couple of months, so much has happened in the world of AI. But more importantly, a lot has happened in the world of letting AI use AI to become better. Anyway, Opus 5 is designed to be used every day. Not like Fable, but it's kind of a crazy, strange situation that we're in. Since when you take a look at agentic terminal coding, Opus 5 right now comes on top of Fable 5 and actually is better than double of what we saw with Opus 4.8. The numbers here are really staggering, and there's almost nothing that GPT 5.6 can compete with. But that's actually the crazier part. There's almost nothing that Fable 5 themselves can compete with, as literally Opus 5 just beats it on every single chord. There's a couple here, like the actual agentic coding, that Fable 5 is still better on, or specifically here, let's see here, legal or health, but the numbers are not that crazy. And also, for being roughly half the price, in theory, in terms of tokens, as we can see right here, 5 per million input, 25 per million output, which is relatively expensive for the newer AI models. Well, if you compare it to Fable, it's definitely a pretty crazy decrease. And again, when I take a look at the numbers, knowledge work 1861 versus 1747. Novel problem solving, Fable doesn't have a number, but it's 30.2%. Agentic search 90.8% versus 87.4%. Here, on multidisciplinary reasoning, humanity's last exam, Fable 5 still wins, but actually only on the no tools front. If we use Opus 5 with tools, it actually wins at 64.7% versus 63.9%. Then computer use, 70.6% versus 66.1%, so a very big marginal increase. Agentic coding, like we said before, actually GPT 5.6 Soul wins, but also Fable would still win over Opus 5, which I sometimes wonder how they come up with these models then, as in why is Opus so freaking good, and why did they let this happen? But actually on a different front as well, why would anybody, based on all these numbers now, actually still go ahead and use Fable 5 for the majority of their tasks? I'm not talking about something here and there, but really, when you think of what type of task, whatever task you'd have, why go all in on Fable when Opus is half the price-ish, or sometimes even 1/4 or 1/5 the price, and can literally do it almost at the same level? And here's the kicker. I really think that's why they decided to keep Fable on everybody's subscriptions, because they realized most people would switch over to Opus anyway, and their cost for Opus would still become so great, they may actually just want some of the diversification. Anyway, that's my thoughts process. Agentic coding, Fable 5 at 53.5% and Opus 5 at 53.4%, so it actually loses by 0.1%. Now, in the middle, this agentic coding, by the way, this is just different benchmarks. Deep SWE v1.1, and here's the Frontier Code v1.1 main. And then the top one, the agentic terminal coding, was Frontier Bench v0.1. Business workflows, Opus 5 just kicks them completely, eating dust, which that makes kind of funny how close GPT 5.6 and Fable 5 and Opus 4.8 were, and just how crazy cracked Opus 5 realistically is. On the legal and health fronts, no, they're not winning. And actually, funnily enough, GPT 5.6 was better than Opus 4.8 on at least the health front. It seems that I'm not sure if these numbers are a bit skewed, but it seems that on the legal front, GPT 5.6 is absolutely garbage, but Fable 5 still wins at 13.3%, and GPT 5.6 Soul at 2.5%, which is crazy low. And then on biology, I'm not sure why they didn't rank GPT 5.6 Soul, as the numbers there are not coming out. But again, Opus 5 wins it with 49.4% on hard and 90.1% on human solved, which is so freaking crazy. Now, when we're taking a look at the numbers, agentic coding by effort level here, it's really staggering. This is the orange one here is Opus 5, and the yellow here being Fable 5. How crazy good it is on the relative cost scale. Now, what you can see is that you can get significantly more expensive on Fable 5, but the score is basically, if we were to consider, I'm not sure which ones they actually, okay, low, medium, high, extra high, and max. Low, medium, high, extra high, and max. For some reason, extra high is always like the best one to use. I'm not sure why that is. Why max is just kind of, I don't know. Extra high always seems to be the one that wins, except for here on Fable, but whenever these new models will get released, funnily enough, extra high is on top. So what we're seeing right here is that for the same money that you could use Opus 5 on low, you'd basically get yourself Fable on medium. That's around the same level, but then at like almost 2.5 times the cost or something like that. So Opus 5 at low is as good as Fable 5 on medium on agentic coding. And if we're looking at every single one of these, it kind of paints the same picture on different benchmarks. Agentic coding by effort level, and as you can see right here again, cost per task, low, medium, high, yabba yabba do. So Opus 5 at low is basically as good as Fable 5 on low at relatively about let's call it about half the price. Here again, Opus 5 on low is basically as good as Fable 5 on low and completely throws Opus 4.8 at the ballpark because it's the same as Opus 4.8 on max, right? And in this case here, on some of these benchmarks, it doesn't even come close how good Opus 4.8 on max was. Funnily enough, GPT 5.6 Soul is able to kind of catch up, but it just kind of shows how relatively bad Fable 5 was or how overhyped it kind of seems to me. Novel problem solving by cost. Opus 5, you can't compare it to Opus 4.8 or GPT 5.6 Soul. There's just no comparing it here. This is insane. Opus 5 here again. Look at these numbers. Now, they are known for tweaking these numbers as much as possible to make it so that they can raise more investment and do better in the stock market. So, of course, I get that. But when you consider just how good these numbers are, they can do some faking and tweaking all they want, but something is just cracked. It's cracked, right? And that's kind of what we're seeing right here. Opus 5.5 builds a 3D interactive animal cell. All right, so probably with just one prompt, most likely. This is what it was able to build, something of this sort. Oh, look at that. A whole interactive app. That is very interesting. And let's see the other ones. The wind tunnel. Opus 5 builds a working wind tunnel. I guess it just showcases wind and how it were to aerodynamically, flow over a car. Yeah, all right. All right. We can't, of course, see how accurate this would be, but it seems pretty much exactly like how that would work. Okay, so there we go. That's pretty cool. And now when taking a look at the misaligned behavior, we talked about this before, how often would the model result in using a different model? How often would it not be exactly what the output that you'd want it to have? And how often would it not be able to answer? All these things are kind of in this ballpark. Automated behavioral audit. On our automated behavioral audit, Opus 5 scored 2.3 on overall misaligned behavior, the lowest of our recent models, with Sonnet 5 being at 3.35. So a pretty crazy decrease from Opus 4.8 as well, which was at 2.85. Now, mind you that if we're talking about the cybersecurity front, Opus 5 does not advance the frontier in risky dual-use capabilities. In rigorous evaluations conducted alongside private sector and government partners, we found it remains behind Mythos 5 in both biology research and offensive cybersecurity. And so when we take a look at system card here, I guess I didn't even open this one to see the details of that. Okay, never mind. Not sure exactly what I was thinking. This is about 200 pages long of just cybersecurity and evaluation talking. But the exploit gem is actually the one that we were most interested in because we've covered this over the past couple of days with showcasing how ChatGPT, how risky it was in the newer tests for actually seeing all these cybersecurity risks. But the long story short of that exploit gym test, which again is this test to see how something could take over an entire network, how many steps it could get through, and to what extent in a certain hour budget, it basically showcases that Opus 5 does not come close in terms of this cybersecurity front to Fable 5. So I guess, or Mythos 5, I should say. So I guess what's still going to happen is for whoever is using Claude Fable 5, it most likely still will actually send them back to Claude Opus 5 when the questions are too, let's call it, sketchy. What happened recently on Claude is every single time you had a question that was to do with cybersecurity or auditing your code or some stuff like that, sometimes if it flagged it as something kind of potentially entrapping or like you do something malicious with it, it sends you back to Opus 4.8. And I guess it's not going to route you back to 4.8 because it's just so much worse, but still something slightly worse, in this case Claude Opus 5. Having said that, still, if you take a look at how good relatively it is to Opus 4.8, Opus 4.8 before scored a 0 on the exploitation success grade 1.0, and Opus 5 scores a 4, but Mythos scores a 13. And so when we're comparing this, yeah, all right. On some fronts, Opus 5 comes close to it, not at the same level, but comes close. On some fronts, it's still leap ways behind. And so, yeah. If we're talking about general use, this is literally the best advancement we've ever seen, because Fable 5 was so good but so expensive. And if this actually comes out sometimes with a better output than even Fable 5, I'm not sure if I ever have to switch to another AI anymore. Like the guys at Anthropic are so freaking cracked. It's so good, I can't even put it into words. Just for fun, you can go to Frontier Bench yourself, right? This basically measures just how good these frontier models are and kind of see the numbers in a little bit more detail, so showcasing exactly how many tokens it spent, what the cost was, and how effective it was, and what the rating is. And it showcases that if you use Opus 5 on the absolute max of the max possible, it's leap ways ahead. It's so far ahead of every single thing else. I think it's kind of crazy. Like, it's kind of crazy just how good this is and how they let it be this high up the ranking, when I feel like the better business decision kind of would have been like to just kind of rat it out a bit more, to go for a Fable 5.1 or something like that and let the most expensive model be this good. Because I kind of wonder what the big idea is behind it. Is it just to stay on top? Is it just to get more investor funding? Or is there something even crazier that I can't even imagine? Hey, I'm not too sure. All I know is this is really, really crazy. I'm going to be using this all the time. I've actually already been using it for the past couple of days. And of course, if you want a little overview of all the changes and the most important things you can do now, make sure you check out the Discord, actually the school, which I've left linked down below. Of course, 100% free. And if you want more of the coding insights as to how things change or how to use this in a different manner, I can also make a slight video on that, because some things have changed, but it's not something too great. For example, default fallback modes, things have changed slightly. All these ones are something that you'll notice if you code a lot, like the effort values matter more now. And actually, one of the most interesting ones to me was mid-conversation tool changes. So the fact that that can actually switch in the middle of a conversation, just like how they now added that you can switch the model inside a convo. It'll have to read the entire thing again, but it could happen. That's just some cool new shifts that are happening piece by piece. And eventually, really, when it comes to these AI things, you won't even need tools anymore because they're encompassing it all. But for right now, it's still so freaking useful. Anyway, some cool stuff that I just wanted to mention. And I'll see you guys again in another AI video, hopefully somewhere later today or tomorrow, depending, of course, on what comes out.